Some call me Steve, Dad, husband, or friend. Others might call me boss, coach, or mentor. Today, you can call me the Leadership Hacker. Thanks for listening in. I really appreciate it. My job as the Leadership Hacker is to hack into the minds, experiences, habits, and learning of great leaders, C-suite executives, authors, and development experts so that I can assist you developing your understanding and awareness of leadership. I'm Steve Rush, and I'm your host today. I'm the author of Leadership Cake. I'm a transformation consultant and leadership coach, and can't wait to start sharing all things leadership with you. Today's special guest is Fred Joyal. He's a speaker, author, and business coach on the superpower of boldness, and the author of Superbold, from Underconfident to Charismatic in 90 days. But before we get a chance to speak with Fred, it's a Leadership Hacking News. We're going to explore names. Names matter. My name is Steve. Everybody introduces themselves with this one special gift that we were given from the moment of our birth. Yet how often do we get people's names wrong? And how often do we give ourselves the permission to say, "Oh, I'm terrible with names, but I'm great with faces"? A somewhat convenient excuse maybe. We live and work in a really multicultural society. Our names come from all over the world and not necessarily from the location you're in. They sound different. They have different spellings. They may be shortened names that are nicknames almost in replace of their real names, but come in many different ways. Some of my kids, in fact, have even changed their names. Well, metaphorically changed their names growing up because they thought they weren't comfortable with this particular label, but soon changed it back. Whichever way we think about our names, it's our identity. You must know how it feels when somebody gets your name wrong, and that's because getting someone's name right really matters. It may take a bit of extra effort. You may have to ask them to spell it. However, often minimal effort as a leader can really engage people when they know you know them. And this demonstrates you're willing to take an interest in them, and from wherever their name derives, their culture too. So is this such a big effort? Let's have a look. The acknowledgement firstly that the name is tricky for you is okay. Let people know that if they have got a tricky name. That demonstrates you care enough. Recognise you may need to take time to practice somebody's name, and as much as that sounds crazy, it will make a huge impact to the relationship. Ask the person for clarification if you're unsure. I've made loads of mistakes on this podcast initially, when I've had guests come on the show and made an assumption on how their name was spelt, only to have to re-edit episodes to get their name right. And by practicing and persevering until you do get it right, you create a bond between the individual and you. When we address your colleagues by name, especially in team settings and meetings, it helps collaboration, and that behaviour will help create effective teamwork. Saying people's names is a strong signal that you see them, you value them, and that you want their input. So make this an everyday practice. Greet people by their names, look in their eyes as you do so, and introduce colleagues to each other by their names. And let's get it right. So the next time you're not sure on how to say somebody's name, just politely ask, "I'm not sure how to say your name. Please can you help me pronounce it?" Or just be brave and go for it and ask them, "Did I get that right?" You'll soon find out, and most importantly, demonstrate once more that you value them. That's been the Leadership Hacking News. Let's go ahead and dive into the show. Fred Joyal is a special guest on today's show. He was the co-founder of Futuredontics, the parent company of 1-800-DENTIST, which for over 30 years has generated over $1 billion in revenue. He's just written a fantastic book called Superbold, from Underconfident to Charismatic in 90 days, and it's an Amazon and Wall Street Journal bestseller. He's also been a TV and commercial actor, as well as a stand-up comedian, and now sharing his learning through coaching, speaking, and other business consultancy. Fred, welcome to our show.
Steve, excited to be here.
So I've just finished reading Superbold, and I can tell our listeners without hesitation it is an amazing read. And personally, for a middle-aged guy and falling into habits, I still found myself thinking, wow, that's me. So we're going to get into some of that a little bit later. But before we do, it'll be really great for you just to share some of that very varied and wide experiences that you've picked up along the way.
Yes, I'm happy to do that. I started many years ago as a junior copywriter as an ad agency, and that was the first job I really liked. Like it was the first groove I really found. I was wandering and trying all sorts of things. I was fairly directionless. And then when I hit the advertising world, I thought, oh, I could actually do this for a lifetime, for a career. And it led me to starting my own business, which was 1-800-DENTIST, which is a referral service for dentists where we run advertising, run a call center to attract the calls and then disseminate those calls out to dentists. And we did that. I did that for about 30 years. I owned the business and sold it about 5 years ago. And it was much more successful than we imagined, but tons of twists and turns. You run a business for 30 years, through recessions and internet booms and busts and all of that. And plenty of good and bad things happen along the way. And that's actually what I coach businesses on now is how to hit different potholes than I hit, or not hit them at the same speed that I hit them, so that they can accelerate their success.
Right.
And then, of course, got to the point where, Superbold became an emerging theme that I really wanted to get out.
So when you hear the word Superbold, you call it Superbold because you actually have come to the conclusion, I think as I have, having read the book, that it is a superpower, right?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, if I had to give my child one thing, it would be the confidence and understanding that confidence is the foundation. Boldness is taking that confidence and going into action and learning what happens when you're bold, that bold people have always understood, whether they learned it as children or they never unlearned it. But they learn all of these things, that all of the great stuff in life really occurs when you're bold.
Right.
And that's how you can have the most impact on the world.
And you cite in your book actually a bunch of successful business leaders and entrepreneurs. Just share some of those that you share in the book, and actually we'll probably all notice that there is boldness that comes with that.
Yeah, certainly. Somebody like Sir Richard Branson is constantly making bold moves. He jumps from industry to industry, which is a fairly reckless thing to do for most people, but he had learned that if you approach it in a certain way and you protect your downside risk, amazing things can happen. And you can take that brand from a record business to a telephone business to a soda business to an airline to outer space, and now a cruise line and hotel lines, all of these things. He has 400 brands under the Virgin emblem, as far as I know. Somebody like Tony Hsieh, who started Zappos, and he didn't start it. He actually came into Zappos as the CEO and had made millions very young. He and his brother had made a very successful exit early on that gave him tens of millions of dollars. By the time he was done, he had poured every bit of it into Zappos.
Yeah.
And Zappos reached $1 billion of revenue in 10 years. So he generated $100 million of growth a year by just saying, I could go into the shoe business by approaching it in a completely different way. And pushed all his chips in the middle of the table when he had complete financial security. But he went to the next level.
And you look at people like Elon Musk at the moment, who's continually reinventing himself. He's just bought Twitter. And everybody's asking the question now, what does this guy want with Twitter?
Yeah, and he's not going to tell us right away.
Exactly.
But it fits into his grand scheme, or it's just something he said, this has to be done differently. Whether just like he looks at transportation as being needing to be disrupted, and satellites and outer space, and like, why would you launch a rocket and throw away the booster? He looks at things like that. Why would you build a car and not use the battery as the chassis for an electric car, those kind of things. And why not dig tunnels under cities? Why not create that technology?
Yeah.
What Twitter's got to do with that? Who knows?
Yeah.
But he guesses right quite often.
It does, yeah. And to your experience, when you think of entrepreneurs and business people, can you actually be successful and uber successful without being bold?
I don't think so, because you need to go into action without certainty.
Right.
And actually say, whatever happens, I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to absorb that knowledge and make whatever changes, or go in a 180-degree different direction, because the marketplace has told me something about that what it wants, and it wasn't what I thought I wanted. But they gave me a big clue, and now I can go in that direction.
Yeah.
He started, even when Elon Musk started, the Tesla, it was a little Lotus with an electric engine, and it was a sports car. It really only was fast. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't useful as a car for most of the part. It was a toy. But then he said, okay, what people really need is a multi-passenger vehicle. And it actually created a 7-passenger vehicle. And the reason a lot of people don't realize that the original Tesla sedan was 7 passengers, because he's got 5 kids.
Practical as well.
Yes. But you have to be able to, little things like give feedback takes boldness. Accept feedback takes boldness. Meeting people, the cornerstone of anybody's success is their ability to meet whomever they want, whenever they want, and create a real connection with those people, not network, but actually connect with people. And that takes stepping up, and it takes developing those skills. Boldness allows you to develop these skills. You can read about them all day, but if you're not bold enough to put them into action, you'll never develop the skill. If you want to learn to be a great public speaker, there's 100 books on it. You can read them all. You'll still be a terrible public speaker.
Yes, right. Very true.
But get on stage and suck and watch the video of it, and you'll get better.
Yeah.
And every time you get on stage, you'll get better.
So in its rawest sense, how would you describe boldness?
It is chasing your dreams, however, and going after an opportunity, a moment, whether it's fun, whether it's meeting somebody, whether it's taking a chance on a business. It's putting your idea out there, putting yourself out there, bringing your full self to the world, whether it's in a personal situation or a business situation. Personal situation could be, say, I really want to meet that attractive young man or woman across the room at this party. Or it could be, I need to raise $10 million for my business, and I have to pitch it so that they believe that I will execute it. And this, if you know investors, they bet on the person. They don't bet on there's millions of ideas out there. They call it, we bet on the jockey, not the horse, is what they say.
I've heard that before, yeah.
Yeah, and so it takes boldness to say, I can make this happen. I will do whatever it takes to make this happen, and project that. And so you can't succeed without it. And it is just allowing your full self to blossom. You don't become somebody else. I'm not somebody else than who I was as a young man, very shy. I am the full me. I can bring the full me in every situation.
Yeah.
And that's impactful.
What's the reason that some people often get boldness confused with either arrogance or confidence, in your experience?
Because they confuse a narcissist with somebody bold. A narcissist is actually extremely underconfident, extremely insecure. It's why whatever you think of former President Trump, he had an incredibly thin skin. Every little slight offended him, and that's very typical of that type of personality. That's not bold. That's, boldness, true boldness has an element of humility in it, because you know that there's so much more that you can become, rather than pretending that you are enough or more than enough or amazing or great. It's you're moving through the world saying, I can be better.
Yeah.
Because that's what true boldness teaches you is, wow, just like what you're saying with my book, is you consider yourself probably a fairly bold person. But as you read the book, you say, wow, that's like 5 areas I could be bolder.
Definitely. Yeah.
And that creates, as you mature in life, you become more humble, because you appreciate how much more there is to know. But to me, boldness is, you want to have as much of a positive impact on the world, because that's mature fulfillment. It's not about taking advantage of people or conning people, because that's what a confidence man does, is con people. He convinces them to trust him. But that's not and that takes a certain amount of boldness, but you're feeding the dark side.
It's almost misguided boldness, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the irony behind Superbold as well, Fred, is that you learned the techniques that you describe in the book, but not in 90 days, but in 30 years, right? So you were a really shy individual, struggled with boldness. How did that transformation come about?
I got to really examine it as I was writing the book, and I realized that it was just a tremendous amount of frustration, that actually I was angry at myself at times, because I said, wow, you actually have missed a great opportunity, whether it was meeting a terrific woman, or speaking up in a certain situation, or missing out on a great adventure, or just a very powerful moment, or a very important moment, like giving a eulogy for a friend. And so many people do this. They say, oh, I'm not good at public speaking. I hate to be in front of people. It's like, really? This is your best friend just passed away, and you're not going to get up and say something? You're never going to get another chance. That window is going to close. And that's analogous to a lot of things in life.
Yeah.
These windows of opportunity shut, whether it's that person across the room that you want to meet, and you say, oh, look, nobody's talking to Jeff Bezos right now. I can go over and talk to him. And it takes you 10 minutes to get up the nerve. Meanwhile, somebody has walked up and talked to him. And now you can't interrupt. Or you have to interrupt, which is going to be even harder. It'll take you 10 minutes more to get up the nerve to do that.
You describe a bunch of situations in the book, actually, where you've shared situations where you'd missed out, or you thought you could do things, and it's only after the event that kind of boldness aha moment presented itself for you.
And I saw bold people, and I would say, why are they like this? Why are they not processing rejection the way I do? Why does it bounce off them? And why they just go in fairly uncertain about the outcome, but they don't care, because they know they're going to discover something. And once you start doing it, once you start behaving boldly, you say, oh yeah, it's this thing was totally unexpected, but this thing's great that happened. I was hoping to do this, but I was open to anything. And then something completely different happened that was better. And this, I love to emphasize this, especially early on, because a lot of people don't realize this, and bold people know this, is that it's almost as fulfilling to try and fail as it is to try and succeed. Almost, it's very similar. What hurts is not trying. That's painful. That gnaws at you for years, if not forever.
Moments lost, almost, isn't it?
Yeah. But if you tried, you go a lot easier on yourself. Look, I walked over and I talked to that woman, and she told me she was married, and I turned around and I said, well, that's lovely to hear. Nice to meet you, and walked away, instead of saying, geez, I really should have met her, because she's the girl of my dreams. Now, what bold people also find out is they're wrong about those things. They know there's like, I could stand here and fantasize that person is my soulmate. A bold person walks up and realizes, wow, there's very little to connect with this person. But they're not as concerned about the outcome, so they don't project the giant fantasy on top of it.
Yeah. Now, all the way through the spine of Superbold, you've created this methodology called Pride, which is really an acronym of a couple of activities that really help people along the journey. I'd love for us to dive into that, because it was when you were describing the Pride method, particularly a couple of things that will come out as we kick it through. That's definitely when I had my aha moment, and I'll share with you and our listeners kind of some of those experiences too. So how did the Pride method come about for you?
When I first started teaching boldness, I said I have to break this down into how I did it and how you could apply it. What would you summon to develop this boldness muscle and have the tools in any situation to know how to react? And so the pride means something. That word is very special, because I tell people it's not being immodest. It's about living a life that you're proud of. Why wouldn't you want to have at the end of your life, be proud of that life you lived? And that means you left it all on the mat. You took every opportunity. You took every chance. You didn't stack up the regrets. And so let's break down the acronym. So the P is preparation, R is relaxing, I is insight, D is dosage, and E is everyday action.
Yeah.
Let's start with preparation.
Good place to start.
What a lot of people don't realize is that we prepare for all sorts of things, like driver's test or the bar exam or whatever it is. Getting a fishing license even, but we think we don't need to prepare for social interactions and that sort of very specific behavior. We think we can just walk up. The reason they say, oh, I don't know what I would say to somebody, it's like, that's because you haven't thought about what you would say.
Yeah.
Break it down to something simple. I want to meet somebody. I'm going to talk to a stranger. And this is, by the way, this is what I recommend to everybody, is talk to a stranger every day.
And I do that now.
Yeah.
So one of the key learns for me is and I don't even know how this happened, right? Because I would have said I'm quite bold. I can walk through my village and my town, head down, right? Quite comfortable in my own skin. But actually, just smiling and saying hi makes such a difference.
Yeah, and it's why not uplift somebody else with expecting nothing in return.
Yeah.
And so people say, well, they put all this pressure on themselves. Oh, I want to meet this person, but I can't think of anything interesting or clever or funny to say. It's like, wow, how about being nice? How about just introduce yourself? Take the pressure off yourself, because if you come up and you're that clever, now you've set the bar high. They have to come back and be clever or just admire you. Is that what you needed? Did you need to be admired, or did you just want to meet them? And when you prepare yourself to connect with somebody, it's simple. A compliment, ask a question, just say your name and say, hi, I'm Steve. I'd really like to meet you. That's such an interesting pair of glasses you got on. I would love to know where you got them.
Yeah,
that's all you have to do, and you prepare yourself to do that. Now, you move on through life and say, okay, I'm going to look for a promotion. I need to prepare how I'm going to have that interaction with my boss. I'm going to rehearse that. I'm going to know what I want to say. I'm going to prepare my speech to go raise money from these investors. You're not going to walk in there and say, oh, I know my business really well. I have watched so many entrepreneurs grossly unprepared to walk into investor meetings. And they think because they know their business so well, they can talk about it really well, instead of preparing a methodical laying out of their business. Their biggest problem is they know too much about their business. You say, what does it do? And tell me what it does. I actually just did this weekend. I said, tell me what your business does in one sentence. This woman talked for 5 minutes. I went like, that was a long sentence.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what you do, because you gave me so much detail that I missed the bullet.
That's right.
And so preparation is critical. and in any sort of interaction. And once you get good at it, here's really important fact: preparation is the foundation for spontaneity.
Yeah.
You can be spontaneous if you've got the backup, if you know what you could say. I've walked up to plenty of people knowing I'm just going to say, "Hi, I'm Fred, like to meet you," and in the moment I notice they have amazing eyes or something like that, or an interesting piece of jewelry, or they're reading an interesting book, whatever it is, and now I can talk about that. But
Yeah.
I got my backup, and it's the same thing on stage, you know.
So relaxation and insight, are they correlated?
Yes, because the part of relaxing is understanding that you can control your state. And a lot of people don't realize that you can control it just by breathing. Now, I go into detail in how you do this, but if you check your physiology, because we tense up in certain situations, and if you just relax your body, before I walk on stage, I just shake off any excess tension in my body and I take 3 deep breaths. Breathing will relax you. And there's more techniques that I talk about, but you can relax yourself, but it doesn't happen when somebody says, "Why don't you just relax?" That just makes you more
It
nervous
does.
because it's like, "Oh, I didn't realize I looked nervous." That makes me more nervous. Um, but once you relax yourself, it reverses the process, and you say, "Oh, I can control my state." And as a public speaker, you turn that into energy. You're not like so relaxed that you're like a sloth. You've taken all that anxiety and turned it into energy. So now you're bringing your full self to the stage. So that's the key is learning the simple ways that you can relax yourself. And some of the ways you relax yourself are the insights. Bold people have key insights. The number one thing is people are not thinking about you anywhere near as much as you think they are.
Yeah. That's true.
Who are they thinking about?
Yeah.
Themselves, right? That's it. They'll think about you for about 4 seconds before they rotate back to themselves. But we think 20 years later, they're still thinking about that embarrassing moment that we had with them. And if you get to talk to them about it, they say, I have no recollection of that. And you go, "No, really? It was so humiliating for me." And it's like, it's been nagging at me for decades. And you say, "And why would you do that?
Hmm.
Why would?" And so this is what bold people do is they have a tiny, tiny group of people whose opinions really matter to them. And everybody else's, they don't. They say other people's opinions of me are none of my business. And they act that way. It's
Yeah.
very powerful.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, your next one, I've got to tell you, was I had probably more aha moments thinking about dosage and how I behaved and how I continue to behave than any of the other things in the book, because this is where you either overplay for something or underplay it and just don't get it right. Tell us about what dosage means for you and how we could use it.
It means controlling the intensity of the experience as you build your boldness muscle. And it's the same principle as exercising. If you were trying to get in shape, you wouldn't start by trying to bench press 300 pounds because the bar's going to fall on you and basically decapitate you. You would start with lighter weights. This is how you build your boldness muscle: is you do simple things that build that strength to interact with people. Start by smiling at people. Talk to a stranger every day, 1 or 2 sentences. What people do is they overload themselves. They say, I got to stop being shy. I'm going to go to a party and meet people. And I'm going to meet 5 people. And they don't meet one person because they've made it too challenging for themselves. Say, I'm going to go to this party and I'm going to say hi to 3 people. I'm going to introduce myself to one person. You control that dosage so that you don't retreat back into your shell. And what happens is you gradually expand your comfort zone wider and wider and wider. And you look back at yourself. And if you do it the way I lay out in the book, you look back at yourself 3 months ago and you say, "Wow, that was really challenging. Now it's nothing." I can walk up anybody in the coffee line. I'll walk right up and talk to them, and I'll think of something to say. And before I know it, we're engaged in conversation.
Yeah.
And you'll say, "That was impossible for me." And you know why? Because you built up gradually. If this is people do these things, they put themselves in situations where it's so intense and so there's so much at risk that when it fails, they're tormented by it. That instead of, if you want to meet your soulmate, start meeting everybody, so that when you actually meet your soulmate, you can talk like a normal person. And have a normal interaction, not overload the whole conversation. And you also learn that maybe who your soulmate might actually be or not be. But don't try to do something that don't not be prepared by leaping into a situation that's way more than you can handle. If you're going to do public speaking, don't start with an audience of 400 people. You're going to crumble. You're going to be tongue tied. You're going to sweat bullets, and you'll barely get through your presentation.
Yeah.
Start with 5.
And when I reflect back on the things that I've done really well, it's probably because I got my dosage right. Where I've got it really wrong is because I've usually got way too much going on, and I've been overconfident because I think that's the right thing, or I've been over bullish trying to make a sale. And that's definitely been a bit of a moment for me. My mum and dad would have probably told me as I was growing up, don't run before you can walk, which used to frustrate the hell out of me because I wanted to run.
Yes.
But if somebody described it as just get the dosage right, lift the right amount of weights before you do your 300-pound bench press, as an example, you can start to think that actually we all have to find the right level of dosage. Otherwise, you will never be confident enough or feel confident enough to be more bold.
And it's a very personal thing. You have to decide what dosage is right for you. Everybody's developing their confidence and boldness from a different starting point. So don't compare yourself to somebody else and say, well, why did this person, they just walk through the party and they meet everybody they want to. I want to be that, so I'm going to start doing that.
Yeah.
You are where you are, and you're going to work your way up from there. You can get as far as you want to go, but it's a steady upward climb. It is not a series of quantum leaps.
Indeed it is, yeah. So when I look back on my career, I think I've actually forgotten to be bold. I've got out the habit of being bold. And what you've allowed me to rethink and reframe is your E in pride, which is everyday actions, recreating those simple habits to become more bold. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, and this is really a life skill, is to know that if you want to accomplish something, if you want to achieve something, that whether it's personal growth or building a business or writing a novel or whatever, or learning an instrument, work at it every day, even if it's for 5 minutes. If I learned this from someone who was talking about how they wrote a book, and they said, I had a requirement that I was going to write 1 sentence of that book every day, no matter what. And they said, what happened is sometimes I'd write a sentence and I'd let myself off the hook because I was tired or whatever, but I always wrote a sentence. And then sometimes I'd write a paragraph. Sometimes I write a page or 2 pages. I'd hit a sweet spot and away I'd go. But the fact that they got to it every day tells your brain, this is who I am. This is, and if you do it on the weekends, or you do it when you feel like it, you're a dabbler, and your brain says, oh, we're a dilettante, we're a dabbler. This isn't important to us. And I ask people, say, well, no, I write when I feel, I really get in the headspace, really feel like it. I said, wow, do you only exercise when you feel like it? Because that would only be like twice a year for me.
Exactly right, and me.
And so and the other thing about setting a goal to do it every day is you don't have to decide to do it or not. It's like brushing your teeth. You're going to do it. It's just when. And you'll get to that point where you say, oh my gosh, it's like 7 o'clock at night. I haven't talked to a stranger. I'm going to go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I'm going to just say to something. I'm going to talk to somebody in the produce department, just because it's like, I can't go to bed without doing that. And what 2 things happen. The first thing is the brain says, we are a person who meets people comfortably. We know how to behave boldly. The other thing that happens is, just like controlling the dosage, it aggregates. Everything that you work at every day, no matter how little, aggregates. You want to learn a language, learn 3 words a day. At the end of the year, you know 1,000 words. At 1,500 words, in any language, you can have a conversation with anybody.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff, isn't it?
So it aggregates, it builds gradually, and your dreams decay not because they're so hard, it's because you don't get to them.
Yeah.
You think you will get to them. I can get to that next year. And you and I have both lived long enough to know how fast the decade goes by at this point.
Totally.
And that's a harsh lesson.
Indeed. So we're going to give our listeners an opportunity to find out how they can get hold of some tools that you've got on your website that will help people with some of these activities. But before we do that, we're going to just flip the lens a little bit. This is where we hack into your leadership brain. And I'm super looking forward to this because you have such an enormous back catalogue of experiences to draw from, Fred. But we're going to ask you to dive into your top 3 leadership hacks. So they're your top 3 tips, tools, or ideas. What would they be?
My favorite one that I tell everybody, and it's because I have to tell myself every day too, is the one word: start. Just start something. It's amazing how the hardest thing for human beings to do is to start, and then you get through it. Whether it's working out, I've begun more workouts by saying, look, I'm just going to do some push-ups because I don't have any time and I don't feel like it, but I just drop to the floor and I do them. What happens next? I do some sit-ups. And then before you know it, I'm saying I might as well go for a run or a bike ride. But I started. But what we do is we do everything but start, and we'll burn 2 hours sometimes. I was reading the guy who wrote The Alchemist, and I'm forgetting his Coelho is his last name. I'm forgetting his first name, but he was saying, I do everything possible in the house before I start writing. He says, I'll clean everything. I'll sharpen pencils. I'll walk the dog. I'll take 2 showers. He says, it's like, finally, I'll sit down and I'll start. We all do it. We torment ourselves. So that thing, if you just start to say, I'm just going to start right now, sit down, do it. And all of a sudden, away you go, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The other big hack for me is to celebrate failure as a step up. To say, it's a 2-stage process. You can feel terrible about it for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it takes. And then now you're going to say, okay, what's in this for me? How do I mine this for information? So you allow yourself the emotional reaction, but you don't stay attached to it for the rest of the month or the year or forever. You say, all right, there it is. I had the emotional outburst for what happened. What's in this for me? And there's a term in Aikido where it's called embrace the hit as a gift. And the more I've done that in life, the more I've said, wow, this is terrible. What's in it for me? And then it turns into something really interesting. And I've lost $1 million on stuff. And it was expensive tuition, but I learned from it. And I turned it into a multiple of learning from that.
Yeah.
So that's very powerful. And then the other hack is to get really good at asking for help. Try to figure out who can help you and stop. And it keeps you from being a micromanager or a soloist, because collaboration is amazingly powerful. I am a much better speaker because I get feedback all the time on it. I have a personal coach that talks to me every week, and it's painful sometimes because he ends every session with an action plan. Like, what are you going to do it? Like I'm doing a Superbold workshop. And I've been wanting to do it since I put the book out. And so he finally said to me, so what's the boldest thing you could be doing? Which of course is a very painful challenge. He knows exactly how to come at me. And I said, well, that would be the workshop. He said, okay, how long would it take you to put a workshop together? I said, yeah, probably about 90 days. He said, all right, so what's the date? Okay, June 24th, June 24th, 25th. He said, all right, put it on the calendar.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. I'm aiming for that date. I have to make it happen because I've booked the rooms. Now you just start to put, you basically, you do this. This is another hack. Let the door lock behind you. Don't give yourself a way out. So you have to figure out what to do.
Yeah. Love that.
Burn, if they call it, burning the boats in the harbor or whatever. But it's like, if you say, well, if this doesn't work out, I can always just do this. It's like the entrepreneurs I know that succeeded, they got in so deep they couldn't get out. Tony Hsieh was in so deep with his money, he had to make Zappos work.
Very true.
I get in so deep with 800 dentists, I had to make it work. I owed my family money. I owed $200,000 in media that I had to figure out how to pay. I had a personal guarantee on the rent. It was like I had 3 doors locked behind me.
Mm.
My partner and I had to figure it out.
Focuses the attention, doesn't it? That's for sure.
Yeah.
So next part of the show, we call it Hack to Attack. So this is typically where something in your life or work has not worked out at all well, maybe even screwed up and been catastrophic. But as a result of it, that experience is now serving you really well in your life or work. What would be your hack to attack?
A lot of people fall for this, and I certainly have, which is the whole sunk cost thing, where you say, oh, I've got so much into this, I have to keep putting money into it, instead of cutting your losses, saying, look, take the pain now, because it's just going to get bigger. And you're going to, sometimes it's about money. Sometimes you've put so much money into something. You bought this piece of technology and you're trying to make it work, and it's the wrong technology. It doesn't fit, or it's too old, or it's the whatever. And you just have to sell it or park it and get the right technology, or it's the right person versus the wrong person. Everybody I know in business fires that person that they know they need to get rid of months after they know they need to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And you got a sunk cost in that person. You say, I spent so much time and money training them, I think I can make them better. You can't.
That's very true.
Abandon the sunk cost. So that's been, just applying that to money and in things that I've put time and money into, and people.
Yeah.
It's benefited me so much now, because I got so many scars from it.
Yeah. The last thing I want to explore with you is, you're now 21 years old. You're toe to toe with Fred, and you get a chance to give him some words of wisdom. What would it be? Nothing bad happens unless you decide to label it that way. Nice. And all these things you're afraid of are things you really want to do. So do them. Yeah. Be willing to be afraid and do them. And use the fear as a directional signal for yourself. And of course, fear is one of the very reasons why we avoid boldness in the first place. Yeah. Yeah. Because we are incredibly good at calculating the worst case scenario in our heads, and the voice in our head loves to come up with all of these things, but really terrible at calculating the odds of it actually happening. Yeah, very true. Just look at smiling at 10 people a day. Somebody's not going to smile back, but a really shy person says nobody's going to smile back. But until you do it and you realize 9 out of 10 people smile back. And so the 10th person, who knows why? It could be the worst day of their life. They could have bad teeth. You don't have, when you learn not to take it on, that's a really powerful thing. I'd say that to Fred too. You don't have to take any of this stuff on. Just keep moving. We're all flawed human beings working our way through life. Billionaires and homeless people, we're all in a struggle. Nobody is perfect, and trying to be perfect before you leave the house is a failed strategy. So in terms of dosage, I would love to have more of a dose of Fred, but we're coming to the top of the show. What I would love to do, though, Fred, is to let our listeners know how they can get hold of some of the tools you talked about, maybe get a copy of Superbold and learn a little bit more about the work that you do beyond what we've talked about today?
Yeah, easiest place is to go to fredjoyal.com. You can download the first chapter of the book there. You can buy the book on Amazon. It's in hardcover and Kindle and Audible, and it's me reading it. And if you do the digital version of it, you can go to fredjoyal.com and download the exercises, because there's a whole bunch of exercises. You're going to want a physical copy of them. So there's a PDF of them in the website. You can also see a couple of Boldness lectures that I've done there. And if you're in LA, or if you're willing to fly in, the first workshop is going to be June 24th and 25th in Santa Monica. And then I'm going to be doing them around the country. And who knows, I might have to go to London to do it.
Exactly right. So, Fred, I just want to say thanks ever so much. I knew the first time I met you that there was a reason I'd met you. Having now read your book and you've been on the show, you have definitely shone a light on the lack of boldness I didn't even know I had, and helped me reinforce some great behavior. So I just want to say personally thank you, but also thank you for being part of our community on the Leadership Hacker podcast.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure. I hope everyone benefits.
I want to sign off by saying a thank you to you for joining us on the show too. We recognise without you there is no show, so please continue to share, subscribe and like, and continue to get in touch with us with the great news stories that we share every week. And so that we can continue to bring you great stories, please make sure you give us a 5-star review where you can, and share this podcast with your friends, your teams and your communities. If you want to find us on social media, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at Leadership Hacker, Leadership Hacker on YouTube, and on Instagram, _leadership_hacker. And if that wasn't enough, you can also find us on our website, leadership-hacker.com. Tune in to next episode to find out what great hacks and stories are coming your way. That's me signing off. I'm Steve Rush, and I've been your Leadership Hacker.